Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Traister, and I am here today with Dan Dalton, who is one of the founders of Dalton and Tomich. Dan has helped a number of churches leave the denomination and keep their property.
Good morning, Emily. How are you today?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
Likewise.
So since we've received an overwhelming response to our video series, I thought we would try something different today and get to know Dan as a person, learn what he has done for churches over the years, and go over some frequently asked questions that Dan receives from churches. So Dan, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Well, Your Honor, I wasn't expecting that, but I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
All right. So Dan, tell me about yourself and your faith background.
Born and raised here in Detroit, Michigan. Went to school in Kalamazoo for undergrad and University of Detroit for law school. I clerked for the Chief Justice of Michigan Supreme Court, and then worked at an insurance defense firm, and then went out on my own and have been on my own with having a firm for the last 20 years or so. I grew up in the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church. I went to church there, was baptized, confirmed, went to school and high school through a Missouri Synod Lutheran Church program. Went to a Jesuit college, University of Detroit for law school, and changed over to the Methodist Church after we got married about 30 years ago. And we just left the Methodist Church a little while ago and are now with a non-denominational church. So pretty much my entire life, I've been involved in one church or another throughout my legal career.
How did you learn about Methodist polity?
Well, when I was involved in the Methodist Church, my local Methodist church, I was asked to serve on a number of boards. I was on trustees and finance committee, SPR, the personnel committee, on the administrative board, and I really learned a lot during that process. Our church was going through a growth period, and then it hit some struggles where there was a clash between pastors and a clash between leadership, and I kind of rose through that and helped our senior pastor through that process. And through that, I learned a lot about the denomination. I learned that there was a book of discipline. I actually never even heard of the book of discipline before that, and started to become aware of that. I read a lot about Methodist history as well, from 1887 and forward. Learned about Methodist polity through the organization of the Methodist Church, and I kind of went through all sorts of Methodist books of discipline. This is one from 1888 from the Methodist Church, and just really try to get an understanding of Methodist polity so that we could run the church the best we could. But then it came to a point where I saw that the church was splitting and people were leaving, and I just wanted to get a better understanding in terms of how the church operated, and just basically taught myself this whole process.
When did you start working on these sorts of cases?
Back in the early 2000s, at that time the Episcopal Church was splitting, and there was a lot of number of local churches that wanted to leave the Episcopal denomination and join the Anglican Church. And those cases were kind of easy because the Episcopal Church took the position of the local church, the members could leave, but the property remained with the diocese. So we had to litigate all those cases. After that, the Presbyterian Church USA went through a split in around 2008 through 2012. I worked through a number of those churches, local churches that wanted to leave the PCUSA denomination. And then around 2015, I was invited to be part of a working group within the Methodist denomination, and actually worked with a group to form the Westland Covenant Association back at that time. And we helped form the organization and got the group exemption through the IRS, and haven't really done much with them since then. But I have worked with a number of churches who have decided to leave the Methodist denomination to become independent since that time.
Dan, churches ask, how do we, the church members, find out if the church is on board with us if the leaders want to leave?
Well, Emily, that is one of the biggest questions churches have today, because they really don't know who's with them and who's out. A lot of people in the pews just aren't following these issues, and they come to church and they leave, and this just is not on their radar. So it really wouldn't be uncommon for people not to know what's happening, and for churches not to know where their members are at. What we recommend is that the very first thing is the leaders should meet, and the leaders should talk among themselves to find out where they're at, and basically ask the question and get an answer to, where do they see the church 5 years from now? Who will be the pastor? What will be taught? Will they be traditional? Will they be liberal? Will they be institutionalist as it is right now? And once they have that answer and have about 90% on board with that, then go to the pastors and ask the pastors the same questions. And sometimes the pastors will be with them, sometimes they won't. But you really want to know from the church itself where they're going to be, where that church is going to be, because in all likelihood, the pastors are not going to be around for a very long time. They're typically moved about every 6 years by the bishops. So you really want to know, if you're going out, are these pastors going to go with you, or are they going to stay? Are they going to fight you? That's really kind of what you need to know. And then the third thing is to go to the 20% of your church membership that actually attend and they give and they're involved and they volunteer, and find out where they're at as well. And once you have those answers to those three groups, then you'll really know, or you'll have a sense where your membership is at. Because ultimately you're going to need to take a vote to get the buy-in for moving forward. And by that time, you really want to know what the answer to that vote is before you take it. There is now an online tool that you can take, and we can work with you to link you to the company that does this, which is specifically formed just for your local Methodist church, to find out those answers. So you can skip that whole process and just buy this service, which is really inexpensive but super helpful to have. And it's anonymous. The answers just go to us. They're not shared with the bishop. And we can find out exactly where your church is at by going through a series of questions on this specific topic. And again, it's really helpful just to have this, just so you will know where your members are at, if they're going to want to stay, they want to leave, and where they want to go to if they want to leave, to have that information for you, so you can make your best choices and make your best decisions moving forward.
Have bishops taken property and closed churches?
Oh, absolutely, Emily. It's really tragic. Since about a year ago, the separation protocol was announced with great fanfare, and there was two promises that were made. One by the bishops, and that was they wouldn't close any properties, and one made by the churches that wanted to leave, where they promised that they would not assert any type of church trials for violation of the Book of Discipline. Well, bishops have just gone through and just have destroyed local churches. They've taken parishes and they've taken parsonages and properties, sold off campgrounds and office buildings. And really now they're just looking at anything that's viable that they can take and they can sell quickly to fill up their coffers. Happens every day, all across the country, every conference.
Do bishops follow the Taylor Disaffiliation Plan?
Absolutely not. What's really unfortunate is in 2019, at the specially called General Conference, when the Taylor Disaffiliation Plan was passed, that was the one way out of the denomination, because before, joining the Methodist Church is kind of like I called it the Hotel California rule. You can always join, but you can never leave. There's no way out under the Book of Discipline. You had to assert a claim under state law to do so. But with this Taylor Disaffiliation Plan, it really provided a way out. And it's exactly what the bishops did not want to happen. So it passed. It's still a viable option under church law, but it's not followed by the bishops. It's not endorsed by the bishops. It's not utilized by the bishops. I'm not aware of any conference that will follow it or apply it. And it's really it's unfortunate. It's really created much more division in the church than really what is needed today.
What do you think will happen on the May 8th virtual General Conference?
Really nothing. I think that the bishops made a huge mistake by saying that we can't have a virtual conference to consider the separation protocol that they agreed to because it's too complicated. But we can have a virtual conference to make sure that we get paid for the next 3 years. That just sent the wrong message to both the liberals, the conservatives, and the centrists. It really just showed that the bishops are just into this matter for themselves. It's just a very uh, tone deaf move on their behalf. There is a movement right now that several folks are trying to get enough votes to amend the specially called meeting to add the separation protocol on it. But there's just not enough votes. The folks that we've talked to, the annual conference delegates, the folks on both sides of the equation, the bishops internally, they know that there's just not enough votes to do that. And even if there were, there's dates in that separation protocol that need to be changed. There's parts of the separation protocol that separate groups within the denomination right now have said that they could never support. So it's in all likelihood, it's not going to happen on the 8th. There's not going to be a separation protocol vote. There will be a vote to pay the bishops because their Episcopal fund is going empty and they feel they need to be paid. That's to be determined. But nothing's going to happen on that date.
Do you think there will be a special general conference in 2022?
I really don't think that'll happen. They've announced that it'll happen, but quite frankly, there's a couple things playing against it. One is cost. The denomination can't afford a conference right now, and there's no way to believe that they're going to raise enough funds between now and 2022 to pay for it. And it's getting all the people from around the world to come to Minneapolis for a conference. The second thing is that the next quadrennial is 2024. So it's only 2 years after that you have to have another conference, which again, there's just financially, there's not funds to pay the institution right now. So to have two conferences in a series of 2 years from a financial standpoint, it's just not going to work. The third thing, and more importantly, is what we're hearing from the institutionalists, those inside the United Methodist Church, is that there's no desire to have a conference in 2022 to talk about the separation protocol. The goal of the institutionalists, which is the bishops and those really running the denomination, is just to play the long game. And by that I mean is to make sure that time expires on this separation protocol. So by the time there is a vote in 2024, that there just won't be the support to pass it at that point in time. Because there's nobody in the church, there's nobody in the denomination that wants to have the church split on their watch. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And more importantly, the institutionalists know that a vast majority of the 32,000 United Methodist churches in the United States, whose the average size is less than 75, are going to do nothing. There's just local churches lack the leaders, they lack the pastors, they lack the initiative to leave the denomination. And so just staying where things are at is exactly where the institutionalists want to see the things to go. And to hope that those who really want to leave will just leave anyways. They'll sue them and they'll get some sort of settlement or go through litigation somehow. But at the end of the day, there's just no desire by the institutionalists to actually have a vote on the separation protocol. So I don't see a general conference in 2022 happening. My sources within the denomination are telling me there's not even a plan to schedule it in Minneapolis. If you go online right now, you can look at the conference, the Minneapolis Convention Center schedule. It's all published, it's all online, and there's nothing for August of 2022. That really tells you something right now, where there's really no plan, no viable plan to have a conference at that time.
Dan, why can't you talk about the churches that you have led out of the denomination?
I would love to talk about those cases. We've helped 44 churches go out to date. We've got dozens more in the hopper right now. But it's not me, it's the conferences. They require a non-disclosure and a confidentiality agreement and a non-disparagement agreement on every single one, everyone. Because the conferences don't want the world to know what churches have left. The only churches that you see that have gotten out are the ones where the conference issues a press release saying that the church is left or is planning to leave. And that's really unfortunate. Every client and potential client we talk to ask for references, and we'd love to do that. We'd love to provide it, but we don't want to get our clients in trouble in violating these non-competes. And I mean, not these non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements. So we can't even refer them to existing clients that have gotten out or ones that are in the process. But the bottom line is it's the conference that's driving this issue is they're mandating confidentiality agreements, and we just have to live by it. We can't also go to existing clients that are going through the process because, quite frankly, as you guys know, under the Book of Discipline, under 2549 3b, that a church can be closed by bishop on a finding of exigent circumstances. Which means that if the bishop finds out that you're thinking about leaving or talking about leaving, they can on their own close the church, appoint trustees, transfer title to the conference, close your bank accounts, and the whole 9 yards. And that's your worst case scenario. That's kind of why you need to keep it quiet. And we just can't afford to allow these churches to open a door to someone that they don't know to give a reference. So again, we'd love to give references, we really would, but we just can't do it because of these confidentiality agreements.
Dan, have you worked with other denominations besides the United Methodist Church?
Sure, like I said when we started, I worked with the Episcopal churches that I've left and Presbyterian USA churches and Methodist churches. Those are the primary ones. But I've also done work with the Reformed Church of America and the Christian Reformed churches, the RCA and CRA, who are really going through the same issues at the same time the Methodist Church is going with. I worked with evangelical Lutherans. I've worked with a number of churches, Free Methodist, Wesleyan, all sorts of different denominations throughout the country on these issues. I've even worked with local religious institutions that are just on their own or separate entities. So like a Jewish synagogue or Chabad or a Muslim mosque or a non-denominational church, just to help them navigate these issues of property ownership and things along those lines that we're talking about today. So yeah, I have a very broad range of experience working with all sorts of denominations and faith communities on these specific issues.
Dan, what are your thoughts on the Global Methodist Church, the WCA, and the Methodist Connection?
Sure. So like I said before, I helped organize the WCA, and we secured the group exemption through the IRS. And I haven't really had much work with them in the last 5 years, other than setting them up. I think they're a good organization. You know, their purpose was renewal of the Methodist Church. And I think they've done their best on a grassroots basis to do that. I think they're really the driving force of the separation protocol and a number of things like the 2019 specially called conference. I think that was largely a result of the WCA and the work that they've done. The Global Methodist Connection, Global Methodist Church has sprung out of the WCA. That's a denomination eventually. And I haven't done anything with them. They have their own book of discipline. I believe they're separately organized, and they have a group exemption through the IRS as well. But I think the goal there is churches who are involved in the WCA or churches that are conservative that eventually want to leave the Methodist Church and have another home, another connection. That's where they'll go. Just from what I've seen, it's really basically a UMC light. You know, the Book of Discipline is very similar to the UMC Book of Discipline. It can be modified and changed, just like the UMC Book of Discipline. There is going to be the same type of leadership of elders and bishops and deacons. There's going to be, apportionments. There's going to be calls. It's pretty much the same thing, just a lighter version. There's not going to be the social principles like the existing UMC polity. They're pretty much going to follow the same type of work that they've done within the UMC. But again, I'm not involved with them. I don't know real much about them other than they've sprung out of the WCA. The Methodist Connection is an interesting group that's more of the ultra progressive, I'll call it, churches. There's about 40 of them that have signed on to become this new denomination to leave the Methodist denomination, believing that it's not progressive enough, and to have their own connection, their own viability, their own faith community. It's just like with anything, with all of these new denominations that are forming or going to another denomination, Local churches really need to know what they're jumping into. Will there be a trust clause? Will there be apportionments? Will there be bishops moving pastors around and things like that? And a lot of those issues haven't been resolved yet. And so that's why you see a lot of churches just becoming independent, because they don't know what the future holds. All they know is what they've seen, which is in the UMC, it started one way and ended another way. And they know that Book of Disciplines can change over time and people's opinions can change over time. And they certainly don't want to jump into another denomination that has done to them in the UMC what will happen in the future. So if you want to be part of a connection, it's a great thing, local churches, but you really need to know what you're jumping into, and you need to know it'll change over time. That's the way life goes.
What should churches look for in an attorney?
That is one of the biggest issues you're going to have moving forward. You want to have somebody that you can trust, somebody that knows what they're doing, and somebody that's going to lead you out of the denomination so that you can keep your property and you can protect your ministry moving forward. We've helped 44 churches throughout the United States in the last 2 years leave the denomination. All of them have kept their property, and all of them have actually grown as a ministry as a result of leaving the denomination. And we have that inside knowledge of Methodist polity, of the case law, of state laws that apply to these situations. So we can certainly help you. But if you want to go local, there's a couple things you should look for. One is someone with experience. Not all attorneys do this area of the law. It's a very niche area. A lot of attorneys are generalists. They do divorces, criminal law, bankruptcies, personal injury. They don't do this type of work, and it's really something they should not dabble in. The worst case scenario is getting somebody that doesn't know this area of the law that starts working on it and puts you really in a bad position to start. And there's really nothing much I can do to fix that after you do that. So get somebody that knows what they're doing. The second thing is find somebody that's responsive. A number of years ago, I sat on a state bar committee, and the number one complaint by far was attorneys that just did not respond to their clients. And there really is a telltale sign to know if somebody's responsive or not. If that attorney is not responding to your calls that you initially make to them, if they're not getting back with you on the questions that you have, and that they're not doing the things that you've asked them to do at the outset, they're never going to change. They're always going to be slow to respond or just non-responsive. They'll be critical of you. They just are not into this case for you. And if you get that sense, don't get that attorney. That person's just not going to change. And really the third thing that you should do is you're going to get somebody that's going to volunteer typically in the church to do this for free. It's called a pro bono attorney. And pro bono is great because it's free. There's no cost. And you think everything's fine. But again, pro bono does come with a cost, and that is having somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. They could be the smartest attorney in the world. They could be the best antitrust attorney, the best patent attorney, the best family law attorney. But if they don't know this area of the law, that hurts you. I've had several cases where we've been brought in to replace the local attorney, where they've just taken some strategic steps at the outset, at the very front, that just can't be undone, and we've made a big mistake. And the second thing about doing pro bono attorneys is this: you're going to be on the bottom of the pile. That attorney needs to work, and it needs to make money to generate for himself or his or her firm. And so when you're pro bono, meaning the free work, you're not going to get your work done quickly or quietly or first. It's going to go at the very bottom of the pile. So if you want someone that's responsive, someone that is going to work with you, someone that knows this area of the law, go with somebody experienced. And if you don't feel comfortable and you want to use somebody local, just please use somebody that knows what they're doing, that can spend the time, that can work with you and respond to your questions. That's really the best attorney you can have.
How does the church pay for legal services?
Most churches always ask that question at the end, and here's the thing. Under the Book of Discipline, you can use funds of your general operating fund to pay for legal services or any professional services. You can pay for accountants, financial advisors, you can pay for lawn and landscaping, you can do any type of professional service you can pay for using your general operating fund. there are certain steps you need to do to protect yourself and protect your interest in doing that, and we can help guide you through that process. But those funds, the legal work funds, you don't have to dip in your own pockets. Uh, uh, you can use general operating funds to pay for legal services.
As always, thank you for your insight, Dan, and it was also a pleasure to get to know you on more of a personal level. If you're watching this video and you are interested in a consultation, please feel free to reach out to me or Dan via email, or you can always call the office at the number listed in the description below. Thank you.